Hey, everybody. I wanted to, since we were unable to meet due to our power outage today, wanted to kind of give a speed run of sorts through our classes I originally have planned. Obviously, some stuff I have on here we're not really going to worry about too much. But I do want to point out the homework. We're really in the kind of final stages with our analysis essay project. So I don't want to lose too much momentum with that, although I will make a slight adjustment to what is due for Thursday, which I'll talk about at the end of this little video. But keep in mind that by Thursday, we need a rough draft of the second essay, the analysis essay, and I'll go ahead and tell you it's going to be a half draft, which I'll talk about what that means shortly. And then next Tuesday, the final essay will be due. So let's kind of go through a couple of things real quick. What I was going to share with you guys today were just a couple of kind of quick drafting reminders from what I call the red notes. That's my, if you haven't checked it out yet, that's my kind of comprehensive set of notes that I've put in the essay 2 folder. And there's a video that kind of goes over them too. This is really just kind of hitting the highlights, but you never know. Maybe something that I explain today will be useful for making something click. Basically, what you're going to do is with these different sections of the analysis essay, and this is all coming directly from the assignment sheet, but with the introduction, what you're basically going to do for that, you can keep it relatively short and sweet, but you'll just summarize the main point or maybe a couple of main points from the text and make sure that you include a thesis. Now, don't get into the analysis yet because that's going to be the second and third and fourth and fifth and however many paragraphs you have, but that's going to be in the body section of the essay. And so your next part after the introduction and your thesis statement will be a relatively short section of purpose analysis and audience analysis. And that could be 1 or 2 paragraphs. You might have a very small paragraph on purpose analysis and then a second really small paragraph on audience analysis, or you can do what many people have done in the past and combine those into 1 paragraph. And in that section, you can feel free to kind of write in your own words, but do make sure that you kind of get specific with it, right? This is not something to be general about. The example that I always think about is like where somebody says that Charles Darwin's natural selection piece is for everyone because everyone's a person and this applies to everyone. But let's get real here. Kids are not going to read Charles Darwin's natural selection article, right? Think about that. Think about who would be most likely to read this. Who was Darwin writing his for? Who is Sanger writing hers for? All of the ones that you guys are using, who are they written to? Try to guess as specifically as possible and think in terms of demographics, age, geographic, experiential, meaning, are they experts on the topic or would they be novices? Definitely think about things as far, especially if it's relevant to the article, as far as race and things like that too. And then the majority of the paper after that is really the message analysis. And that's where you get into the emotional appeal, logical appeal, and credibility appeal. And again, that's going to be kind of different depending on what your text is. Some people give me 2 really good paragraphs of a message analysis because maybe there's not all 3 appeals. And then sometimes people find so much in one of them that they actually go on multiple paragraphs on that. So they might even have 4 paragraphs, an extra appeal for emotional, for example. And then this is based off of a class that I shared with the class last time. Remember that when you do the message analysis, you're basically going to introduce your example, quote your example, cite your example, analyze your example. And that comes down to 2 questions. What is the example and how does it work? And I have that slide following just as a quick recap, but I did want to mention it here real quick too, because this slide might be a good kind of quick checklist. Then your conclusion. Some people have asked me about this. What do you write here? That could be a couple of different things, but one that I might kind of suggest is just a little bit broader personal evaluation. Could this be improved? And if so, how? The real trick with this paper and where the majority of the word count is going to come from, remember this is 1,000 words minimum, the majority of that is going to come from those analysis paragraphs, especially as it relates to the message. And so just a reminder, you're going to start each paragraph that's analyzing with a topic sentence. Make that a pretty simple one. So-and-so uses a lot of emotional appeal in his writing or her writing. You don't have to come up with some sort of amazing transition or topic sentence, but then make sure that you get into the example. It's helpful to introduce a passage first and then quote it and then cite it and analyze it. And I already mentioned this, but when you're analyzing, you're really just answering the two major questions I've got up on the screen here. What type of strategy is it? What type of appeal? Is it logical? Is it emotional? Or is it credibility? And then how does it work? How does it make people believe or feel or whatever? And how does that connect back to the purpose of the text? And so what I was planning on doing in class was I was going to have us work through one together just in case that were helpful. And so I had these two examples from Martin Luther King's letter from Birmingham jail, and I was going to have you guys pick one, and I was just going to write an example on the fly and ask you guys some questions for feedback and stuff like that. Obviously, we couldn't do that. I don't know if it would have worked anyway, but it would seem like a good idea to me. But what I did instead was I just made another example, and I did this one very recently, so I can, it's kind of all fresh in my mind, and I just wanted to take a second just to explain my thought process behind it. So like I said, up at the top, I've got a topic sentence. Martin Luther King Jr. used many examples of logical reasoning in his letter, right? Pretty straightforward and simple as to what's in this paragraph. It's going to be the examples of logical reasoning. Then I get into an example of just one of those passages that use logical reasoning. It says, as he writes about his plans in Birmingham, he explains his position on demonstrations, right? That's a really simple overview of where we're about to quote from, but it also kind of reminds the reader of what's going on there. And that, of course, if they've read it or not read it, it just kind of tells you what the context is in just a sentence. And then I get into my quote. I've got a little signal phrase, as I call it. He explains. Then I get my quote right there, and I won't read the whole thing, but he's just going through all these steps of nonviolent campaigns. And then I got my citation after that, King, page 352. I'm using the correct edition this time. And then I get into my analysis, and I did the thing that I explained to you guys. I first determine what type of appeal it is and what it does. So it's an example of King's logical reasoning because it's a carefully explained series of steps. King is explaining how his group have followed these steps. And then it connects back to the purpose because he is trying to dispute the claim that he's not patient, not going through the proper steps. Explaining these 4 steps shows that the group did not act rashly or emotionally in conducting those protests. So that's what I would expect you guys to write after your examples. You just explain, you obviously quote it and cite it, and then you just explain what it is and how it works. Always connecting back to that purpose. How does this prove something? How does this connect back? How does this make someone feel in a way that would make them support the argument or whatever the purpose of the document might be? Okay, and then finally, we're not doing any workshop time, obviously, but here's what we're going to do. So for the rough draft, we're going to have a peer review on that for Thursday, but I was originally going to require you to have at least 1,000 words to participate in the peer review. That's kind of like what I did with the first essay. You just had to have the word count so that there was something. Well, considering everything that's going on, I thought it might be better just to drop that down a little bit. So what I want you guys to do is to draft, try to come up with some examples, construct some paragraphs. Maybe the whole thing's not going to be done, and probably won't be. That's okay. But hopefully you've gotten a really good start. That in any case, just get to 500 words on this so that there's something there that people can review, and then you'll be able to participate in the peer review. And then the way that it's going to work over this next week is that essay 2's rough draft, the half draft will be due for Thursday's peer review, and then the finished essay will still be due next Tuesday. So that's my speed run through today's class. Definitely not the same experience, but what are you going to do? Sometimes that's just what happens with life. So I hope everything's going well. Reach out to me with any questions. mnorman@binu.edu. See you guys on Thursday.